The following podcast is brought to you by Iconic Nation Media.
Welcome to The Winning Edge, the podcast where champions are built and legacies are made. I'm Leonard Wheeler, former NFL player turned entrepreneur of 24 years and co-executive director of the NFL Legends community. After years of being on the field, I've learned that the real game starts when the stadium lights go out. This show is your all-access pass to the mindset, strategies, and leadership lessons that fuel success beyond sports. Each week, we will dive into what it truly takes to win in business, leadership, and life. We'll discuss how elite athletes, game-changing entrepreneurs, and industry leaders turn discipline into dominance and setbacks into comebacks. The next play is yours. What if the strongest man you know is the one hurting the most? Everyday men walk into boardrooms, locker rooms, homes, churches wearing confidence, while behind closed doors, they're carrying anxiety, depression, sickness, broken relationships, financial pressure, and sometimes even suicidal thoughts. We've been taught to man up, to stay quiet, to carry the weight alone. But silence has never healed a man. Brotherhood has. That's why Brotherhood in Motion was created. Not for perfect men, for real men. Men who are ready to grow, to lead, to heal, and to become everything God created them to be. On Thursday, September 24th, from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m., 200 men will gather at the Hyatt Centric in Charlotte, North Carolina for the very first Brotherhood in Motion kickoff. This isn't just a launch of an event. It's the beginning of a movement. So if you've been carrying something alone, come stand with us, because no man was ever meant to walk alone. If you want to learn more, go to brotherhoodinmotion.com and register for this life-changing event. The movement begins on September 24th. Be there. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Winning Edge podcast. My name is Leonard Wheeler, and this episode is brought to you by Iconic Nations Media and Brotherhood in Motion. Today, we're going to go into an area that I call going beyond bias. What are biases? What are blind spots that keep us from becoming the best version of ourselves? And what if the greatest obstacle to your success isn't your circumstances, but it's your perspective? And we all have a perspective, okay? So what happens is that we grow up in a household. Some of us, if you didn't grow up in a household, you grew up somewhere, okay? But we bring a perspective based on how we were raised. We bring a perspective in terms of our engagement. We bring a perspective based on our environment, based on our culture. Some homes are different than other homes. But what happens, I believe, in the world today is that we want everybody to have the same perspective that we have, because everybody believes that their perspective is what? Right. What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't your boss, your spouse, your finances, your competition, your childhood, or your past? What if it's something you can't see? One of the greatest challenges in life is this: you cannot change what you're unaware of. But I want to add something to it. You cannot change what you are unaware of that needs changing. Most of us spend our lives trying to improve our circumstances. We want a better job, we want a better relationship, we want a better team, a better financial position, a better opportunity, a better life, okay? I grew up in the projects in Georgia, small town called Toccoa, Georgia. I remember growing up there, and I saw a lot of things that were a part of my culture, right? Whatever those things were, that's not important. But I grew up seeing things that I probably continue to live out based on what I experienced and based on my life growing up as a child. But very few of us stopped long enough to examine the lens through which we were seeing those circumstances. Because here's the truth. We do not see life exactly how it is. We see life through our experiences, through our upbringing, through our fears, through our victories, through our disappointments, through our wounds, through our assumptions of what something should mean, through the stories we've been told, and to the stories that we continue to tell ourselves over and over and over. And through those stories, we continue to tell our children. We continue to share it with our communities. We continue to find people that continue to add to our belief system. And every one of those things become what we start to call a filter. And then that filter can affect the way we see people, opportunities, conflict, leadership, relationship, failure, success, and even ourselves. Because listen, I remember when Lindsay was a little baby, when she was a little girl, we used to go to the park, and I would just see her look at a kid, and they would look at each other. And Steve Shinbaum does a great job at this. He says, "Do you want to play?" And I remember Lindsay would be like, "You want to play?" Little kid look at her like, "You want to play? You want to play? You want to play?" And they didn't have any biases, because no one has destroyed it at that particular point. The innocence that I believe God had created in them connected with one another, and the bias didn't separate them. And then here comes the adults, the mom and the dad jacking crap up. And that's exactly what happens. So today, I want to challenge you to do something that takes tremendous courage. I want you to examine your own thinking, not your boss's thinking, not your spouse's thinking, not your co-workers thinking, not your political thinking, not your Republican or Democrat thinking. I don't want you, not any of that. Not the thinking of the person you believe needs to hear this episode either. I want you to examine your own. What happens so many times is when we go to church, or if we're listening to a podcast, we're like, I need to send this to somebody because they need to hear the truth. So that why do you believe everything you're saying is so factual? And just everybody should believe and follow you. Why? Where does that come from? Because if you listen to this episode and only think about what is wrong with someone else, you will miss the entire message today. This conversation is about you. It's about me. It's about all of us. Because winning doesn't always begin when life changes. Okay? Winning does not always begin when life changes. Sometimes winning begins when your perspective changes. And one of the greatest edges you can ever develop is the ability to see what you could not see before. Awareness is the beginning of every breakthrough. Are we done? All right, here we go. What is bias? Let's begin with a simple definition. Bias is a tendency to think, feel, or judge in a particular way that influences how we interpret people, situations, information, often without realizing it. So what is that saying? Sometimes a bias is a blind spot. A bias is not always loud. It's not always hateful. It's not always intentional. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes bias is simply just invisible. It can operate quietly beneath the surface of our decisions. We all have biases. Oh, maybe everybody else has biases but you. Doesn't that just make you feel a certain way that everybody in the whole world, all these billions of people, can have biases but you? Okay, so let's continue to examine and let me know where you fall in. We have biases about money. Yep, leadership, marriage, parenting, politics, faith, failure, success, age, Do I need to keep going? Education, where someone comes from, what someone looks like, how someone speaks, what position they hold. Come on, have I hit anyone yet? We all have biases. We have biases towards people who are different from us. We have biases toward people who remind us of ourselves. And we even have biases about our own potential. You may have been told your entire life that you're not a leader, that you're not intelligent enough, that people like you don't get those opportunities. And we start to believe that crap because it's reinforced by actions that are taken on around us. Okay? That your past disqualifies you. So if you grew up this way, it disqualifies you because you're not smart enough. So what you do is you spend your entire life trying to become qualified. So you get all of these degrees, but it didn't replace one thing: the insecurity, the bias, the image that you truly believe about yourself underneath your skin. That you're too old to begin again, that you're too young to be taken seriously. And after hearing it enough times, you may even begin to view every opportunity through that belief system lens. And those lenses are real, man. They feel so real. The question is not, do I have biases? We all do. The better question is, which of my biases are helping me and which ones are quietly limiting me? Your bias does not always become dangerous simply because it exists. It becomes dangerous when you refuse to examine its existence. So your bias does not become dangerous because it exists. It becomes dangerous when you refuse to examine its existence. There's a quote I want you to remember. The greatest blind spot isn't what you don't know, it's what you are certain you already know. Whoa, listen to this. The greatest blind spot isn't what you don't know, it's what you are already so certain you already know. That you speak with so much conviction about. And you're so convicted that this is the truth. This is it. This is it. This is it. To where you're not open to listening. Okay, let's just talk about when I played in the NFL. Let's talk about when I played sports. We used to have a saying, the film doesn't lie. The film doesn't lie. During my years in football, I spent countless hours in the film room. And the film room can be a humbling place. Why is that? You can leave the field believing you know exactly what happened. So you can leave the field saying, man, I know exactly what happened. This is the play. This is what I did on this play. You know why the receiver caught the ball. You know who missed the assignment. You know who missed the broken play. You know who was responsible. At least you think you know. You know who missed the tackle. Then the coach turns on the film. And he rewinds the play over and over and over. And then he slows it down. Oh, he slows it down. He shows it from another angle. He slows it down and then he shows it from another angle because there are other cameras. And suddenly, what you believed happened is not exactly what happened. You thought you were in the right position. The film says otherwise. You thought someone else missed the assignment. The film reveals that you missed the assignment, that I missed the assignment, that it was your responsibility first. You thought you reacted quickly. The film shows that you hesitated. The film does not care about your feelings. The film tells the truth. It does not care about your explanations. It does not care about your biases. It tells the truth. It doesn't care about the story you told yourself walking off the field about how amazing you were. The film shows what really happened, and I learned something in those rooms that applies far beyond football. Life will eventually pull all of us down into the film room. Life will eventually put all of us in the film room to where you have to watch your film. And you start to realize that if I don't humble myself at this particular point, I am allowing all of my biases to win. If I can't accept that, you know what, I might be wrong. I might be. And it's okay. Oh, you know what? I'm wrong. A difficult conversation can become film. Let's just talk about other things that can become film. A difficult conversation can become film. That's you in the film room. A failed relationship can become film because it's real. Feedback from someone you trust can become film. A pattern of people leaving your team can become film. A reoccurring argument in your marriage can become film. A missed opportunity can become film. A question is not whether life will show you the film. The question is, will you humble yourself enough to watch it? Life is going to show us the film. It will show us the film. Are we humble enough to watch the film? Or even with watching the film, you start to say, that's not me. Because some people do not want what? The truth. Some people don't want the truth. They only want a better explanation for why they are still right. And that brings me to one of the most powerful blind spots we face. Confirmation bias. What is confirmation bias? Confirmation bias is our tendency to search for evidence that proves we are already right while ignoring information that challenges what we believe. So confirmation bias is our tendency to search for evidence that proves we are already right while ignoring information that challenges what we believe. So we're trying to prove that we're right, even though there's information that's already showing that you're wrong. We do not always search for truth. I'm guilty of that. Are you guilty of it? Sometimes we search for proof. We do not always search for truth, but sometimes we do. If you believe people cannot be trusted, you will notice every betrayal. So if you believe that people aren't trustworthy, guess what you're going to search? You're going to try to prove to yourself that people are not trustworthy. You may overlook the people who have been loyal to you for years and years and years, but you will remember every person who disappointed you. That's also called a lack of grace and mercy. Because, see, confirmation bias people usually want grace and mercy, but they're not really good at giving it. It's okay. I don't care if you're mad at me right now. Don't be mad at me. I'm just a messenger. If you believe you will never succeed, you will remember every failure that exists in your life. Because what happens is that I believe that we start to create a disclaimer and we try to cancel out what the truth could really be. So if you believe you will never succeed, you will remember every failure. You will remember every rejection, and it will become evidence. It will become your new film. Every setback will reinforce the story. So every setback will reinforce what you already want to happen anyway. Every delay will feel like confirmation that success is not meant for you. If you believe your marriage is falling apart, you may only notice what is broken, what is wrong. Oh my gosh, this is wrong. I don't know where we are. And you will forget about all the great things because you're trying to create confirmation of being right instead of just being present. You want to make sure that you are right. So I'm going to confirm that I'm right at the expense of a great relationship. You will hear the criticism, but miss the encouragement. You will always listen for the criticism, but you will miss the encouragement. You will remember the disagreement, but overlook the sacrifice. Somebody can be sacrificing over and over and over. I have a thing that I say a lot right now, and I probably need to stop saying it. But sometimes I feel like it's just never enough. Like, it's never enough. Because as soon as you do this part, I need more. I need that more. I need this more. And you will collect evidence for the conclusion you have already reached. And I know we're all guilty. I know I'm guilty. Our minds can become attorneys defending our beliefs instead of judges seeking the truth. Our minds can become attorneys defending the beliefs that we've already put in our mind instead of becoming the judges seeking the truth. Think about that. An attorney builds a case. An attorney selects evidence. Okay? Builds a case, selects evidence. An attorney presents information that supports one position. But if your mind is always building a case for what you already believe, how will you ever discover what is actually true? Here's the question. When was the last time you changed your mind because evidence changed? When was the last time you changed your mind because evidence changed? When was the last time you said, I was wrong? You know what? Dang, I was wrong. Or maybe in your mind, you don't believe you're ever wrong. When was the last time you said, I didn't see that clearly? You know what? When was the last time you said, I may have made an assumption? Or I need to reconsider my position? Or those words are not signs of weakness. They are signs of maturity. Growth requires humility. Growth begins the moment you become willing to be wrong. Man, it is okay to say, you know what? I was probably wrong about that. I need to probably research more. How can we get to a place in this broken world, and maybe it won't happen, I don't know, to where our biases don't become so stringent and so that we become so stuck in our belief system? And sometimes people might think you're stuck and you're not. So sometimes people will stick you into being stuck. And you may not be stuck, but the confirmation bias want you to be stuck, so they put you there. Anyway, let me not regress again. Let's talk about number 2, ego. People often confuse confidence with ego. I played in the NFL when Deion Sanders played in the NFL. I love Deion, man, because the dude, he didn't just talk smack. Deion did a great job of backing up everything that he said. And people used to get his confidence mixed up with ego. You know why? Because they didn't do it. And because they couldn't do it. So let's take 2 players that I played with against. I played against Deion and I played against Barry Sanders. Deion was more demonstrative. He was, bigger than life in terms of his confidence and the way he exuded himself. Barry was a little bit more meek and mild, but both of them are some of the greatest players ever, in the top 100 greatest players. Why is that? They're not the same, but yet they were both just as confident. And what I'm trying to say is this. It's okay for people to have confidence, but I call ego edging God out. Confidence says, I know who I am. Ego says, I need you to know who I am. Okay? Now, I know what you might be saying. Some people thought Deion was egotistical. That's fine. He doesn't care what you think anyway. That's a fact. Go ask him. Confidence can always walk into the room without needing to control the room. Ego needs to be recognized when it walks into the room. See the difference? Confidence walks into the room without needing to control it. So confidence might walk into the room and you might know confidence in the room, but the confidence doesn't need to necessarily to control the room. Ego walks into the room and says, wow, I can't believe no one is recognizing me and coming up to me and talking to me and telling me how amazing I am. Confidence asks questions. Confidence says, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. Wow, really? That's awesome. Confidence asks questions. Ego already has all the answers. I'll give you a case in point. There was a great friend of mine. His name is Aeneas Williams. And I brag about Aeneas all the time because Aeneas is probably one of the most humble people that I know. And this is why. He's a man of God. He's a Hall of Famer, NFL player. But man, that dude will ask people questions about, how did you do that? What? Hey man, tell me how that happened. He's so curious, but he's so humble, and his curiosity allows his confidence to exude out of his skin. And I say these about these men because confidence and ego, they're just two different things. Confidence can celebrate another person. Ego feels threatened by another person's success. Let me say that one more time. Confidence says, man, congratulations. That was an amazing job. Ego feels threatened by another person's success. So guess what? They don't congratulate the other person. Oh, they don't say a thing. Confidence serves, ego demands recognition. Confidence can say, I made a mistake. Ego says, let me explain why it was really not my fault. Hey, don't shoot at me. I have discovered that ego is expensive. It costs relationships, it costs opportunities, it costs trust, it costs influence. And sometimes it costs people the very future they have been praying for years. Because people do not consistently follow leaders who always have to be right. They follow leaders who are secure enough to keep learning and making sure that they feed the people who are following them. Over the years, I have coached some incredibly intelligent leaders. They understood strategy, they understood business, they understood operations, they understood numbers, but some of them struggled to understand themselves. And that became their limitation, because they chose to not understand their own limiting beliefs. They would ask for feedback, but defend themselves as soon as they received it. So they would say, oh, give me feedback, keep it real, and then as soon as you give them feedback, no, I didn't do that. Okay, then you don't want feedback. They would say they wanted honesty, but punish anyone who disagreed with them. They would claim to value different perspectives, but surround themselves with people who always said yes. Eventually, the people around them stopped telling them the truth, because that's all they're looking for, is for themselves to feel good. And that is one of the most dangerous places a leader can ever reach. Because when people stop telling you the truth, you may feel more comfortable for a while, but you will become less effective. Your title may remain, your office may remain, your authority may remain, but your influence begins to disappear, and people will start to leave you. Remember this. Every breakthrough begins where defensiveness ends. Every breakthrough begins where defensiveness ends. Okay? So, we have actually through 10 of these. So I'm going to talk about one more before I close. And the next episode will begin at number 4. But we're going to talk about number 3. And number 3 is pride. Pride is closely connected to ego, but pride can even be more subtle. The Bible talks about pride goes before the fall, right? So pride goes before the fall. So after pride, then the fall. Pride does not always sound arrogant. Pride sometimes sounds responsible. Sometimes it sounds strong. Sometimes it even sounds humble. Pride says, I don't need help. I've got it. I'm fine. I already know. I've always done this way. Nobody understands this better than I do because I've been doing it for this long. Pride can keep a man or woman from going to the doctor. Pride can keep a leader from asking for advice. Pride can keep a couple from going to counseling. Pride can keep a parent from apologizing to a child. Pride can keep a child from apologizing to a friend or to a parent. Pride allows you to show your insecurity. Pride can keep a friend from making the first phone call to ask for help. Pride can keep a person trapped in a problem they could have escaped with one honest conversation. Pride closes doors, humility opens them. One of the wisest things you'll ever hear said is this: I don't know, teach me. I don't know, can you teach me? Another powerful sentence is this: can you help me understand? Can you help me understand? Those words can change the entire conversation, because pride in a marriage, pride in a friendship, pride says, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Pride says, I'm done. And all of us, I know I'm guilty. I'm the first one to say I'm guilty. I'm raising my hand. I don't know if you can see me right now, but my hand is up. What about yours? Can you raise your hand and can you say, man, Leonard, man, pride damaged my marriage. Pride kept me in the dark. Pride kept me from saying I'm sorry. Pride kept me from reaching out. Pride kept me from asking for help. Pride. That pride and ego edges God out. Instead of entering a disagreement determined to win, what would happen if you entered determined to understand? What would happen if you entered determined, instead of proving your point, what if you became curious about their pain? What if you had a conversation and you asked a question and you let someone speak? What if someone allowed you to just talk without interfering? You have a lot, and I have a lot, and we have a lot to share. When our pride and ego enters the conversation, it shuts up the conversation, is what it does. Humility does not mean you have no confidence. Humility means you have enough confidence to face the truth. Pride builds walls. Humility builds windows to where you can enter in. Man. Pride protects the image. Humility develops the whole person. All right, guys. Next week, we're going to start with number 4, which is narcissism. And we're going to dig in. So I want you to join me next week for another episode of The Winning Edge, brought to you by Iconic Nations Media and Brotherhood in Motion. I look forward to sharing this information with you because I'm speaking to myself first. And so I just appreciate you joining me. And it's game on, baby, because when we go from number 4 to number 10, whew, it gets hotter. See you next week. God bless. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of The Winning Edge. You can write in and ask your questions on my Instagram page at Leonard Wheeler 7, and I will address your questions on an upcoming episode. If this episode helped you, I would love for you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and family. Share the episode with those that you feel can benefit from it. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, X, and LinkedIn, found in the show notes. I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe now and let's build your legacy.